All right, Ray. Well, welcome to the podcast, brother.
What's going on? How are you, Josh?
Good, man. So I've been following your page, and one of the biggest issues that I see in the coffee industry is everyone's kind of detached from their coffee. And
Hmm.
you guys have done a really good job with keeping everything pretty much honest and everyone informed on exactly where their coffee comes from. So before we dive into that, I'd like you to dive into a little bio as well as how you got into coffee, and then we'll go right into your process.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Um, yeah, first off, I mean, I'm really glad that you see that right when you see our stuff. That's something we've worked really hard to try to make a thing with our shop. Yeah, okay, so a little bit about my bio. Uh, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Lived here for like 15 years or so, maybe a little less.
Okay.
Um, didn't drink coffee at all through college. I was not a coffee dude. Um, and and then I worked a bunch of management jobs and got into managing at Starbucks. Um, Basically went in as a manager and learned coffee there and kind of fell in love with coffee there. Um, and then it got to the point where I wanted to dive more into the specialty aspect of the coffee. And I started looking around at a couple local shops and, maybe thinking about moving that way. And I remember specifically one day, everybody talks about they call it like the God shot or like the shot that like introduced them to specialty coffee. I don't know if you have
Right.
that experience, but like I remember vividly like where I was sitting, what coffee it was, and all of that. And that happened probably 2015 at Honest. I was just bouncing around trying few different coffee shops locally. And I sat down at the bar there and I had a shot of espresso and it like blew my mind. Like I didn't know coffee could taste the way that I tasted it there.
Right.
So ever since then, I like immediately was like, this is insane. Why does it taste like this? And started learning more and more about it. And everyone at Honest was super like helpful to me, not knowing any of that and teaching me and showing me. And that was the first like real taste that I had of Honest, like the coffee, but also of the community and the people that worked there. And so yeah, I like went home and immediately messaged somebody that worked there that I had mutual friends with, messaged him on Instagram and was like, I would love a job here, man. I don't know what you guys like, if you're hiring, if that's even a thing. It
Right.
was like an hour away from where I lived, 45 minutes from where I lived. So I was driving way farther, but it just was kind of worth it. And yeah, been with them ever since. Yeah.
That's so as far as so my experience is I had a pour over in Germany with the Chemex, and that's where the Chemex was invented. So like
Yeah.
when I
Oh
when
yeah.
I had that, it blew my mind as well. So when you started working for Honest, what was the learning curve when you started? Like when you were like, I am all in on this coffee endeavor, where was the learning curve at for you?
Well, man, I remember I was so intimidated, like, especially coming from a Starbucks to where you learn about coffee, but it's like in their own way. And
Right.
then going into a specialty shop, man, I was so intimidated. It's such a large world and like it was pretty scary. So I did everything I could. Like I listened to a bunch of Cat and Cloud podcasts. I don't know if you're familiar with
Okay.
those guys
Yeah,
out
yeah.
in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz, I think. Listened to a bunch of them, read a bunch of blogs. Like I was diving all into it, but then the staff at Honest really helped as well, which made me feel super comfortable. So like I got the gist of what coffee was. I understood about farms a little bit because Starbucks, like the knowledge that they give the baristas, they do have stuff which is really great, but it is pretty baseline of like. And I went through. They don't do it anymore. They used to have a program called like a Black Apron program or a Coffee Masters program, where it took baristas and it like did extra training with them. So like we went to a park and we walked around and talked about different varietals of plants and how that's very similar to coffee. And like, dude, it was so hands on, especially for a
Right.
corporation. But still, that was only scratching the surface of specialty coffee. So when I came to Honest, that was probably my biggest thing is learning like the actual world of it,
Just
sourcing, farming, all of it.
Just the world. So was there a learning curve with roasting when you were,
Oh,
just now getting into that? So as far as, like, profiling and whatnot, like, what was that learning curve like? Because I know a lot of people ask me those questions. They'll
yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
"Hey, I don't know how to get into roasting. What was your issues with it? That's what they pretty much asked me. So if
Yeah.
anyone's listening to this, what tips would you give, and what were your issues when you first started roasting?
Yeah, okay. That's a great question. So I'm actually still learning. So my main role at Honest is I run the wholesale department
Okay.
and kind of like oversee the roasters and stuff like that. But we have a head roaster. His name's Matthew. He's a really, really dope dude. Literally started the same week as me,
Okay.
way back in 2015. Um, but it's really awesome you bring that up because I'm learning roasting right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we got this big, I mean, you can kind of see it behind me. It's this big roaster.
Right.
We just, this is new. We've been roasting on one that does about 20 pounds at a time in
Oh,
Franklin.
so this
This
is
one
fresh
does,
on your brain.
this is fresh. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I could tell you all the issues I've been having with learning. But yeah, this one's like a huge step up. This does close to 150 pounds at a time.
Okay.
So not only have the guys had to start relearning everything as well, but it was a perfect opportunity for me to jump in and be like, cool, teach me about curves, teach me about all this stuff. Like,
Right.
why are we doing certain things this way? And um, but again, man, like just going back to what drew me to Honest in the first place, like everyone is just super helpful, and there's no like, I just don't feel this stigma of, oh, you don't know that, you're dumb. Especially for me, working in at a coffee roaster for this long and like selling our coffee and being a barista and all of that stuff, and not necessarily knowing the specifics on how we roast, that could be a very easy spot for somebody just to be like, well, that's ridiculous that you don't know that. Like,
Right.
why wouldn't you know how roasting curves work? Um, but instead, they walk me through it like I'm a kid, and it's really nice, and they kind of help me out. So
I feel like baristas, they just pick up on roasting a lot because they're already used to coffee. They know what coffee should taste like. They know how
mhm.
to pull the perfect shot, and I feel like they're the best individuals to get started into roasting. And I
Yeah.
don't know why a majority of baristas are a little intimidated of roasting, but I feel like they have the best overall knowledge compared to the average individual.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary machine, especially this guy when it turns on, it like roars and like shakes the ground. It's a little scary. Um, but yeah, it's not, I don't know. I don't know if like roasters are going to get angry at me for saying this, but there's a lot of chemistry that has to go with it. And it's like a
Right.
science. Like it totally is. But also at the end of the day, like it's just a cooking process. Like if you have
Right.
any, I'm relating it a lot to like the kitchen because I have a kitchen background. And um so whenever they tell me about something with the different types of ways the beans are heating up or how that actually works and like fluctuating your temperature, um it just all clicks to me like when I
Right.
think of it in the cooking stance. But yeah, anyway, there's a lot of stuff that I've been learning with the whole thing, but I'm really appreciative of it, and having guys to teach me that are really knowledgeable is awesome.
Awesome. So we're gonna dive into this because
Yeah.
I'm super curious about your thought process behind sourcing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big detachment for most people is they don't understand the sourcing. So,
Mhm.
can you dive into that and what your overall goal and what objective you're trying to hit as far as getting that knowledge out to everyone as far as how to source your beans and doing everything the correct and ethical way?
Yeah. So like way back in the day when Honest started, 2014. So it was around about a year when I started. Um, but our main goal and the reason that we call ourselves Honest was we want to be completely transparent with how we were doing things. Um, this is like a sentiment that's mirrored on like all of our web pages, everything I say to new wholesale clients. Like it's because it's the core of who we are. It's just repeat it as much as we possibly can. But like the coffee world can be super sketchy. Like
Right.
um, coffee farms, farmers aren't treated well. Conditions are not good. They can be kind of dangerous depending on where it is and what's going on. And that was one of our number one things. Like starting a roastery, we want to make sure like everything we were getting was was really strong relationships that we build with the farmers, or even with smaller importers that we really trust. And then sharing all that information with the people buying the coffee. So
Right.
yeah, like on all of our bags, there's like a little QR code that will send you to the website, and on there we have all of the, we call them bean bios, but it's literally just like a breakdown of each individual bean we're carrying.
For sure.
So they can go and they can read about like the farm that this came from, and this is the story that the farmers gave us. And even down to like we go and we visit the farms as well and take photos and videos to like be able to show our customers that where we're sourcing. It's actually, I want to bring this up. I forgot to bring it up earlier as we were talking, but you just had Nelson on from De La Finca. I
Right.
think maybe like 2 episodes ago or so.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So we just started working with those guys. Actually, I think we've gotten stuff like small things from them in the past.
Nelson is amazing.
Like the whole crew is incredible there.
Yeah.
They're so great.
So another. So before you
Yeah.
continue with Nelson, so
Yeah.
Nelson, he is a he has the bigger bags, and he also sources out to a company called the Captain's Coffee, and they do for micro. So anybody that's into micro roasting or anything like that, he does smaller bags for individuals. The Captain's Coffee works with De La Finca, and so that's another. So if you know anyone that's getting into roasting that is like a micro roaster, the Captain's Coffee is where it's at, and they pretty much sponsor this podcast as well. But
awesome.
that crew, man, Nelson, he's got his stuff on lock, dude. Like their crew is amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So fun fact, I literally just bought plane tickets because Matthew, the head roaster, he's also our green buyer.
Okay.
And myself, we're going to Brazil with Nelson's whole crew.
Nice.
At the end of July, and we're super stoked for that because we'll be able to see one of the farms that we already carry in the shops, but then we'll see a bunch of other ones that we can kind of experience and make those connections. But they're the one. And sorry, the reason I keep pointing is I literally am staring at a wall of all of the coffee we bought from them right now.
Right.
But we just bought a container's worth of coffee from them, which, just to put that into perspective as well, is some of our like main coffees that we use and keep on a year-round basis. We buy, I don't know, probably 40 bags at a time.
Right.
Like 40 of the big, like 150-pound bags.
Yeah.
With this farm, we tasted some of those stuff. It's a farm coming out of Brazil called Rio Brahante. We tasted some of the product. We loved it. And Nelson was like, cool, like let's do a whole container worth, which is close to 360 bags.
Right.
So we're talking like a way bigger amount than we ever had done before.
Right.
I want to, okay.
No, he will take care of you guys. He is all about making connections and finding the right individuals. His coffee, man, it's so easy to roast. Like it's just like, you know how, some coffee sketchy where it comes from, and then he doesn't roast proper. His coffee is on point.
Super consistent.
Right, exactly. And I don't, and I'm not just saying that because I'm sponsored by the Captain's Coffee. I'm just saying that his stuff is just super consistent.
Yeah, it's the first bean we actually profiled on this machine.
Nice.
And the one that we were able to feel good about. And that we use as a starting point for everything else that we've done on the machine.
Right.
And also, too, I just want to give a shout out to Wes over there as well. He's the one that we work directly with, Nelson and Wes, both of them. And I got to meet both of them as well as a bunch of other of their crew members at SCA in Portland this past year.
Okay.
And they just like, I mean, honestly, when I say they're the nicest people, they're incredible. Yeah. So anyway, so it's having connections like that. So I know like a lot of the times, we'll work directly with the farmers, or we have a bunch of other ones where like maybe like one of the sons or daughters lives in the States, but the family owns the farm.
Yep.
But then sometimes we work with importers, and I know some that can like turn people off immediately. But that's the type of relationship we're talking about when we're talking about working with importers. It's not just like a big company where we're just looking at a whole list of the stuff they have and saying like, okay, let's do that because of the price point. This is like talking with Nelson, talking with Wes, talking with everyone on their crew that we feel extremely comfortable, sourcing stuff from them.
For sure. So. And I think another important thing to do, I mean, if you got the means to do it, going to the farm and seeing where your coffee's coming from, how it's picked and all that stuff gives you like a better idea of what kind of quality coffee you're going to be getting as well. So I think that's awesome that you guys are going.
Yeah. I mean, it's my first Origin trip, so I'm super stoked. Actually, I like traveling, but like, I don't love it. So I'm a little nervous, but I know it's going to be awesome. But then Matthew's been to this farm in Guatemala we work with. He's been there a couple times, and Yeah, so it's something we try to do, especially recently. We've been making it a priority, and that's too, like, just not to get too off topic, but I think it's an important thing to bring up is we hear a lot from customers, like, immediately they ask like, "Hey, are your beans organic?" Or
Right.
like that's always a big buzzword in coffee,
For
and
sure.
it's not. I understand what they're saying with that, and like that's really the only terms that a lot of customers can use to ask like, okay, but like, is it responsible? Like, are you getting this the right way? And
Right.
is everything on this whole like supply chain being taken care of? And so I always have to explain like, a lot of these guys can't afford the organic certification because it is a very
100%.
expensive
Yes.
certification. Yeah. But we go to the farms, we have really, really intimate relationships with these farmers and these importers. So like we can say with 100% certainty, like this is going to be above and beyond what you're looking for. And it's just one of those things with like, I understand what you're trying to say. It's not, a lot of it's not going to be certified, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy from them. Like,
Right.
um, they're doing stuff responsibly and right, even if they can't
100%.
afford that.
Most
Yeah.
of them don't use pesticides or any of that stuff.
Mhm.
So, like, as far as, like, the organic seal, they have to pay someone $400 a day, which is a lot of money in those countries, $400
Yeah.
a day to put people up in a hotel and have them come inspect it, and it's
It's a
just
lot.
not yeah, it's too much for them to handle, and they're having problems trying to turn a profit as is, you know?
Mhm. Totally.
So,
Totally.
yeah, I think that's where the detachment comes from is most
Yeah.
people and that's another question I wanna hit on with you. Where do you so as far as the coffee industry goes, so if you scroll through Instagram and I love most, almost all coffee pages, like, I just love coffee, right? I
Mhm.
like what they're doing, but you can almost tell there is a sense of detachment in most coffee shops. Like, I get the barista side of it, like, I understand that, but most people are not as respectful to the coffee, if that makes any
Mm.
sense.
Sure.
So what is your opinion on that, the detachment?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, man, I again, this is like the food side of me coming in, but I feel like you can literally relate it to anything. So like, I think just we as a culture are very detached from where a lot of our stuff comes from. If you're
Right,
talking about meat in the grocery store is so far removed from the actual like animal of what it was.
right,
Um, I feel like coffee is a very similar thing. You can get a bag of coffee and not really think about what went into making that coffee.
right, right,
Um, or harvesting that product. So yeah, I mean, our biggest thing with that is like, and this goes back to when I very first started at Honest, is just like educating people about it, but doing it in a way that's like we never want to be putting people down for not knowing something, and
right, for sure.
that's what made it feel to me one of the most welcoming experiences was like I didn't know anything, and I never felt dumb about it.
Right,
So we like every chance we get, we try to explain that to them, as well as like in the cafes and on the roasting side, we roast all of our stuff a little bit lighter. I don't, I don't know how many people are going to be like super into like the science of it, and I don't want to like bore people with it. But the gist of it is like the lighter the coffee is roasted up to a certain point, um, you're going to be tasting a lot of the characteristics of that bean from that farm and
right,
everything that they did at origin. And then there comes a point where everything after that, you're going to start tasting more of the roast profile, and
right,
you're going to lose a lot of those like individual notes from the farm and what was put into the bean. So that's why we roast a little bit lighter on the spectrum, is because we want to, in everything we do, like continue to highlight that this is where your coffee came from, and this is the cool stuff they're doing with it. Even down to our shops, like any syrup that we use in our shop for any seasonal beverages, or we have like staples where there's like an almond one that we do, or like a cinnamon syrup that we do. All of that we make in house, and we make it just, it's super easy. It's literally just like simple syrup with like cinnamon sticks steeped into it or things like that,
right.
because keeping that as pure and like easy as possible gets to highlight that coffee um, eh, in the way we want to, I guess.
Right, and
Yeah.
I love what you said just a minute ago, never get mad at anyone for not knowing, so that's
Yeah.
just putting the information out. I think that's the big thing is just, finding a duty and putting the information out. How do you do that in coffee shops as a barista? So if you were to educate the customer because most customers just wanna come in and have, a cup of
Mhm.
coffee, go sit on the laptop or read a book, how would you inform the customer on the coffee as a barista?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, like in our training guide or in our training manual for like all new hires, um, the very beginning of that starts with uh, essentially starts with honest values and talking about that, and then there's a whole portion in it about empathy,
Right.
about what it is, about why it's important in the shop. Um, we had a guy, his name's Brad Hendricks. He like wrote up most of that. He's a dude in town who worked with us for a really long time, and he was like so good at preaching empathy and teaching that to everybody.
Right.
So like that's the number one thing that we want to see, like baristas, but also myself and like all our roasters when we talk about our coffee, is kind of show that. So it comes down to like, man, if somebody comes up and they get a cup of drip coffee and they just want to sit down and read or something like that,
Right.
totally fine. I mean, we're not there to like cram any of this down their throats and say like, hey, that coffee you're drinking is this, this, and this, and this, when
Right.
really all they want is just the coffee and go sit down.
Right.
But being in that space and being like welcoming to them, to make them feel comfortable enough, if they come up and they're like, damn, that was really good. Like,
Right.
then that opens the door to like, yeah, it's awesome. It's actually like our blend that we do in most of our shops, and this is what's in it. And so yeah, but then obviously you get the people who are super stoked. Uh, I don't know if you've ever been in one of our shops, but I guarantee that if you would have come in, like I'm sure you would have been asking questions about like what type of espresso are you guys pulling, or like what are you doing on ice or
Right.
whatever. And our hope is that the baristas would take that time to say like, it's this and this is where it's from, and kind of educating you on that.
Right.
And that's what we try to preach through all of our training and stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think, and that's awesome. That's why I go to a bunch of different coffee shops. I love how people operate. So that's the thing for me, and like where they get their coffee from and where they source from.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to stop into one of your guys' shops. I've never been.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be awesome. And the fact that you guys are prioritizing information, that's amazing as well.
Yeah, we try hard. I mean, it's like we just added 2 new seasonal beans
Okay.
to this rotation. And that took us a couple hours to like get all the information together, put it on the website, put it on the bean bio page, add photos. Like there are definitely a lot easier ways to go about this, where we basically just release something and we're done with it.
Right.
But again, it's just that intentionality of like wanting to put as much as we can out there about this.
Right. So, what is your guys' 5-year plan? So, if you as an individual, you can go into that as well, but
Yeah.
um, just go over like a team goal. Like, what is your guys' 5-year plan as far as where Honest should be going?
Yeah. So we just opened up a couple new locations right now. We got stuff in Nashville, a little bit outside of Nashville, and then out in like Huntsville, Madison, and we're about to open one in Birmingham.
Okay.
Um, so we essentially want to keep those values that like we were founded on, with the transparency and the honesty of everything,
Right.
but translate it to like that Southern coffee culture and like what's kind of happening in the South with coffee.
Right.
Because
Can you explain that real quick? Because a lot of
yeah,
people don't know anything about the Southern. You can go into the plan, but after that, do you mind jumping into the Southern coffee culture? Most people,
yeah,
they don't even know that it exists. So,
yeah.
if you could
Well,
just,
I could just real quick mention that briefly. I mean, I'm from like Northeast Pennsylvania, outside of
okay,
New York City.
right,
So I grew up going in the city all the time. As an adult, I love going to the city up there. Anyone who's ever been to New York realizes like if you search for a coffee shop, it doesn't matter where you are, like you
yeah,
are slammed with options.
right,
And they're not even bad options. Like we're talking specialty coffee everywhere there.
right,
Same thing like all in California. And I know there's other parts like all across the middle of the United States that has it as well. But like those are the 2 main ones that stick out for me, of the whole West Coast and then like the whole like East Coast New York kind of vibe.
right,
But I know a lot of the times the like South and the mid US like kind of gets overlooked in a lot of that. So essentially just creating that sort of culture like around here. We got some awesome coffee roasters in the South, and like you know it's something that I feel like unless you really dive in and try to do some work on it, it's harder to see than
right.
in New
Yeah, I don't
York
I
when
don't
it's
think an I
everywhere.
don't think an espresso machine was seen in a major shop like that until recently in the South somewhere. Like
Yeah.
everything was like gas station coffee for the longest time.
Yeah, yeah, and I never like I mean, growing up, I never thought of it. Like when I thought about good coffee, I never thought, oh, Nashville's the place to go.
Right.
But, I've lived here since 2009, 2010, or 2010, I guess. Yeah. And the coffee scene was already well established when I got here, but
Right.
it's just continued to grow over the course of a couple years. And yeah, I mean, it's awesome to see, man. And I don't know I'm not an expert in any of that, so I don't understand necessarily like what would cause that to happen versus somewhere like New York, except
Right.
maybe just like a mindset of like people who are living in that area. But yeah, I don't know. That's why again we try to like, as much as people are wanting to be educated about coffee, we try to give that to them and support them with that, because we're essentially in an area where uh, it's not really a normal, or you don't walk into a shop expecting to like learn about all of that.
Right. And I feel like it's booming, and we'll jump back into your guys' 5-year plan, but I feel like the South, as far as well, not even the South, just Texas and over to the East is starting to boom a little bit more. Like look at Florida. Florida holds like I think 4 positions in the top 50 states for coffee.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like that's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy where it's going, and I feel like it's starting to spread, and most people are understanding that there is better coffee out there.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it's a cultural thing too. I mean, like Miami has got killer coffee down there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a good, yeah.
So
I think
yeah,
Tampa too. Tampa's got amazing coffee, and Orlando. If you go to either
nice.
one of those cities, they got awesome coffee shops down there. Every time we go on vacation, that's like on my, I'll have a whole list like, oh, I'm gonna go to this coffee shop, this coffee
Yeah.
shop.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing too. Like I mentioned a little earlier, but like there was a little break with Honest where I actually left, and my wife and I traveled for close to 8 months, 7 months, just literally driving around the states. And at that point, I already liked specialty coffee.
Right.
So every spot, every city, like dude, small cities in Arizona or whatever, like I would just look up, like a specialty coffee shop or like a roaster or something, and they're
Right.
everywhere. Like it's I think that recognition wise, it's really in the big metro areas that get it. But I never went like wanting for specialty coffee anywhere I was. Like there was always really great stuff.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, let's hop back into this 5-year plan.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's basically it, is creating that sort of like Southern coffee culture that's you know, as transparent as we possibly can be, and like sharing that with everybody. Each of the shops that open, we have some like really awesome owner operators in all the shops, and really awesome baristas in all the shops, and like we just really want to be promoting that as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is your goal? What is your overall plan? Well, where do you see yourself with coffee in the next 5 years, or where are you trying to go specifically?
Yeah. Man, I've settled into a role here at Honest that I love, and I feel super happy and comfortable about.
Right.
I still love working with the sourcing and helping Matthew when he's looking for new beans. We do a bunch of like QC cuppings and sample cuppings and stuff like that with the whole crew here. I feel like all of us are super, and this is just speaking on like the roasting and wholesale end, but all of us are super passionate about that end of it. And if I could keep doing this, like I would be so happy. I love it. Obviously, I would love to learn a
Right.
little more roasting the next 5 years. Hopefully, I'll feel confident enough to like knock out a couple roasts on my own. But yeah.
Okay, so let's go into this. So I know most people are going to ask this too, and they're curious, especially for individuals that are just getting into coffee. That every guest that I have on, and I receive email after email about this, like, can you ask your guests this question a lot more? So, sure. So we're going to ask you, since you are knee deep into the coffee industry, what is your home equipment? Like, what do you brew your coffee?
Heck yeah.
How do you
Okay.
brew your coffee at home, and how do you enjoy your own personal cup?
Man, listen, I don't know if it's just me or if everyone like in the coffee world can relate to this who works in the industry. It's easier for me to go to one of our shops and get coffee.
Right.
But, on a weekend, I don't really want to leave. I'm in sweatpants, and like, even though it's
Right,
kind of
right.
the style to go out in them now, like I'm not comfortable with it. So man, my setup is I brew on AeroPress. I
Okay.
love my AeroPress. I think it's one of the easiest brewing methods to
Yeah.
use.
You could
And
take it
like,
everywhere with you. Yeah.
yeah, I take it camping, I take it everything, and you can't really screw it up. And there are endless amounts of recipes you can use for it, to get drastically different products. You can try to get something super close to espresso, or you can do like a full on like 400 400 gram like pour. I don't know, man. Like it's just one of the most versatile things. So I use that all the time. Uh, just a hand grinder. Got a little Porlex, like the silver guys. I probably should. Actually, I feel like there's going to be people upset about me in the coffee world for this. Probably should get a new one. But my main method, because I'm too lazy to sit there and hand grind it all. I saw this somewhere. I couldn't even remember where I saw it. I literally just take the I take the grinder, and I take my hand drill, and I tighten it right on the top and screw it, so it essentially turns into an automatic grinder.
I never thought about that.
It's terrible. I would never do it for anyone else.
It
It's
doesn't
only for
work?
me. No, it
It does.
works great. I'm sure I'm
Oh,
breaking
okay.
something in the grinder, but it's just for me, so like I don't
I
care
feel
too
like it would
much.
move. I feel like it would spin super fast. So like, I don't know if
Yeah, you got
it
to really like ease it on the
okay.
trigger on it. Yeah, otherwise it'll just go out of control. But yeah,
Okay.
I mean that's my main thing. I do my recipe right now. I'm doing a bean from Papua New Guinea over here. Um,
On the east or west side of Papua New Guinea?
ooh, that's a good question. I'll have
Okay,
to get
'cause
back to you.
I think it was the west. I'd gotten some Papua New Guinea, and it had almost a pineapple finish to it, and it's super
Ooh,
amazing. Yeah, it's good.
this one's really good. Really nice, like baking spice, chocolate, a little more savory.
Okay.
Not not super like fruity or bright, but like a super savory cup. It's very
Awesome.
homey tasting. It's one of my favorites we got.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
I know most people so I asked you that, so let me go over mine. So mo
yeah,
they
yeah.
asked me that
Please.
too, and I'm like, "Hey, I'll do it in the podcast." But so I am a nerd when it comes to coffee, so I completely modded out my Gaggia Classic Pro, and
Okay.
I refused to 'cause I was gonna buy a La Marzocco,
Hmm.
and I refused. I was like, "I am going to turn this Gaggia Classic Pro into a monster." So I
Sweet.
added everything to it. So that's how I do my espresso. And like I said, I'm a nerd. I have an easy presso for my espresso grinds, and then I
Hmm.
have a regular, just a regular hand grinder for my pour over. And I
Hmm.
use the Chemex. I do French press for my wife, and
Hmm.
then I absolutely love the V60 because I feel like the V60 is just straight to your cup,
Yeah,
and I just
absolutely.
love it. But that's pretty much my brewing methods at home, and it's a form of meditation for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And speaking of Chemex, for sure. I mean, that takes forever to brew a Chemex.
Oh yeah.
But I love it. That's probably one of my favorite cups. It's just so clean. Like the stuff you get out of that is
It's
wild.
amazing, and most people, like, I'll have family and friends over, and they're like, "Really? 4 minutes to brew a cup of coffee?" And I'm like, "Dude, just wait
It's
until
gonna
I
be
put the."
fantastic. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of lucked out. My wife does not love coffee. She'll get like a mocha or a latte or something every now and again,
Right.
but I'm only making for me in the morning, so that makes me I can have a little bit more leeway of like trying some new things, doing different recipes or doing single batches on my AeroPress and stuff. But
Right.
yeah.
I ruined my wife. She can't go to Starbucks anymore. Like, I'll look up these recipes, and then I'll start doing different lattes, or I'll do different drinks for
Mhm.
her, and she didn't understand that there was a place out there that could make better coffee than Starbucks until, we started, testing the waters at home.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the thing too. I mean, that literally goes back to just like educating people. Like they have such a great brand presence, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, things like that, where you can go your whole life and think like, yeah, that's the best it gets. Like that's the peak. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
Um, so yeah, we just again, I don't mean to tie it back into everything, but like that's us just trying to like tell people, yeah, you should try this. Like this is kind of
right,
similar, and like maybe you'll like this, and yeah,
for sure. Hey, so you
yeah.
said you were a barista. Where's your latte art game at? Are you pretty
Oh,
good at
terrible,
terrible at
terrible.
latte
Yeah,
art?
I mean, I can get a couple like levels of tulips going on.
Okay,
Obviously, can throw down some hearts. We got a guy on our team. His name is Gio. He's one of the most incredible people I've ever seen do latte art before.
really?
Yeah, it's just mind blowing to me. He dang, I wish I knew like all his socials and stuff off the top of my head. Anyway, but he's pretty incredible. So there's a latte art throwdown in town soon,
Nice.
and he was trying to like convince me to do it, And I was like, man, I feel torn because I would love to do it. I'm not good, but it'd be really fun.
Yeah, for
But then
sure.
also like, I feel like I kind of have this role at Honest where maybe people would expect me to be really good and like have that really polished, even though that's not
Right.
normally part of my job.
For sure.
So then if I go throw down like a really sloppy heart or something, people are
Mhm.
just going to immediately be like, that dude doesn't know what he's talking about. Like,
Right,
let's
right.
not even talk to them anymore.
Man,
So,
it's the milk consistency. I swear,
oh, okay.
I messed that up so much.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
not frothing the milk enough or
Okay.
aerating the milk enough.
I feel like my milk consistency is on. I don't get the pour
Okay,
down, right?
okay.
But what I found the biggest difference, because I tried for the 3 years I worked at Starbucks to do latte art, I had a really hard time doing it.
Right,
Um, the machine, like steaming, plays a huge role with it.
for sure.
Also, the type of milk you use plays a huge role. So, like
Right.
when we're at Starbucks, we use actually I think their standard is maybe 2%, but we used whole milk when we were
Yeah,
trying to do
whole
the
milk's
latte art.
so much easier.
Totally. So in all of our shops, we use this milk, or all of our Tennessee shops, we use this milk. It's called JD Dairy. It's from a
Okay,
farm up in Kentucky. The dudes literally drive it down once a week. It might actually be twice a week
nice.
now. Deliver it in the glass bottles. Like it's the best. I don't like milk,
That's
and it's the best
legit.
milk I've ever tasted. But
Really?
they got the like cream cap on the top. Like it's the
Okay.
thick like cream line. And yeah, that stuff can steam. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, you could steam that stuff and make like some
You
pretty
could just
solid
pour
latte art.
pour it straight out of the bottle, and it'll
Mhm.
be latte art.
It's killer. Yeah, yeah. The milk makes a huge difference. I'm sure. I don't know if Gio would agree or not. He's the he's the main guy with that, so I'm
Right.
sure he's gonna
Dude, I
listen and be
don't
like, no, that's wrong. But that's what I've noticed in
yeah,
my own
dude, when
personal.
you see some of these people do latte art with oat milk, I'm like,
Mhm.
"How? It's water." Like,
Yeah, 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 exactly.
how are you doing
Yep.
latte art with oat milk?
Yeah, it's wild.
But, yeah, so let's get back into, where Honest is going as far as pushing this education out,
Mhm.
about sourcing the beans. What is their goal, their overall goal with sourcing right
Yeah.
now?
Well, so the thing is, like, we're gonna be roasting coffee anyway, right? Because we're
Right,
a coffee roastery. So our goal is to make sure that we can do it responsibly and work with the farmers, right? So moving forward and like continuing to do what we're doing is our main thing. Sharing it with our wholesale clients, sharing it with our customers that come in, and we also do like community classes and stuff. We had done for a little while, and we're trying to, um, with all the shop build out stuff's been a lot pretty crazy with that, but we're trying to get back on that of doing like a coffee 101, which explains sourcing, varietals, processes, all that. Um, a brewing 101, which is like all home brewing and talks about that.
right,
Espresso, which does all of that. And then we're also maybe introducing a roasting one where people can hang with me and with Matthew, and we can like walk them through the roaster and explain like this is what curves are, and this is like how you fluctuate your temperature and your airflow and first crack and all that stuff. So
right. Okay, awesome. Well,
yeah.
that's good to know. I'm gonna push all that information out, and I'm gonna get your website out there as much as possible because
Heck yeah.
that's the whole point of the Instagram page and the podcast. So Champ Bros, all in all, is just we're a micro roastery. So I pretty much have four, yeah, and my wife helps every now and again, but I have four fresh roast SR 800s hooked up to, you know, a thermocouple that's hooked up to Artisan. So
Yep. Totally.
I'm still putting out 20 bags a week,
Yeah,
but
dude.
the podcast is my main focus pretty
Totally.
much. So, as far as getting your information out there, I have no problem pushing anything you guys have. So feel free to
Heck
send
yeah.
anything over, and I'll put it out there.
And listen, if you want to do a little bit of a bean trade, I will definitely send you some of our bags.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you're willing to let us try what you're doing over there, but yeah, I would love to
Yeah,
give you a
yeah.
bag and
So, I
swap.
use two farms out of. So Nelson is a
Mhm.
legit guy. I love Nelson. And also there's another awesome guy that his name is Ashley Williams. He's out of Honduras as well. Well, he was
Okay.
actually a missionary from Kansas. He moved down to stay, and well, he was a missionary and he ended up staying there, and he bought a coffee farm, and then just, and now he took fourth place in the region
Heck
this
yeah,
year.
that's
So that was
awesome.
pretty. So I can give you some beans from Ashley as well.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. What are you roasting from Nelson?
I just got a bag from him, but
Okay.
pretty much, well, right now I'm doing a Lempira.
Okay,
a
cool.
wash. But hold on, give me. Well, never mind. I'll send it to you.
Okay,
I
cool. Yeah,
just but
I would be curious to know if it's going to be one of the spots we're dipping by when we go,
it's
or
a double fermented, and it has a
okay,
watermelon taste to it. Like it's
dude.
really good. I
There's some
just got it
crazy stuff going on with different processes now that yeah,
right.
it's wild. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll have to send you. I'll send you a picture of the bag I have because I just got it in and I
yeah,
roasted it 2 days ago. I'm so adamant about letting my coffee rest for 4 days,
totally.
so I don't. Yeah,
Man, talk about education. That's another like that's a hard sell for a lot of customers is trying to break the mindset of like roast dates.
right,
I was actually having this conversation yesterday in the shop with one of our baristas with like, we switched to moving our dates on our bags to putting it like on the bottom of the bag instead of right on the front. Because when it was right on the front, that was immediately people's first thing is like dates there. That means it's important. Important. I need to look at it.
right,
Whereas when we put it more on the bottom, it gives it a little bit of a backseat of like it's not super important. We flush all of our bags with nitrogen, so it like sucks out the oxygen, puts nitrogen in.
okay,
So those beans aren't aging for. I mean, the seals and everything are rated for 100 days, so
right,
they're not aging past that. And then even when they do, we want them to age a little bit anyway, for taste like off the roast. Even when we do our quality control cuppings, like we don't taste that stuff the same day. We let it sit for a couple days before we taste it, just because it's like it tastes gassy. Like it's just not
right,
great. Yeah.
right. Most people really don't understand, especially with espresso. I really try to hit 7 days if I'm going to
Mhm.
use an espresso, and most people don't do that. And it's like
Yeah.
I get it. You want fresh coffee. It's fresh. You've seen it roasted a couple days ago. Wait, just wait before
It's
you
just
use
not going
it.
to be the best. Yeah.
No.
I had oh gosh, let me make sure I got this right. We had a employee go. Oh yeah, we had an employee. She went to somewhere in France, went to a coffee roastery there and bought a bag coffee for us back to try. And
Mhm.
their main thing, I wish I could remember what roaster it was. Their main thing was that they roast beans and then they warehouse those roasted beans for months. Like I think the
Right.
coffee we had was like close to 8 months off of a roast, but that's like what they pitch it as. Like that's their thing. And you could tell, man, like when I brewed the coffee, the bloom that started, I was doing a V60. That bloom was almost non-existent. Like there was
Right.
no more gas left in it.
Right.
So I immediately would think like that's going to be a pretty lackluster cup. It's not going to be great. And
Right.
man, it was mind blowing. Like
Really?
it was delicate. It was like complex. It had all of these layers going on to it.
So their pitch is letting it rest for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could remember who it was. It was a, but it was an experience. It was really, really cool. And I think it like took that bite off the front a little bit of it,
Right,
And I
right,
think that opened the coffee up to like let you taste a lot of the other things that were in it and were going on that were maybe a little more delicate that would have been overshadowed by, you
right.
know,
And that's
yeah.
another thing too. So once people start, especially with the pour over method, I feel like they don't let the bloom sit enough, and they're like, I don't understand why my cup is like, I taste all this acidity. I'm like, you
Mhm.
have to let it degas with the bloom right off the rip.
Yep, totally.
And I just the education portion, that's another thing. I wanna keep pushing it out and, you guys as well. Just getting people informed about how their coffee should taste, and
Mhm,
they don't understand that the smallest minute mess up can just dramatically alter the taste of your coffee.
mhm. Yeah, totally. Man, I'll tell you too, like I'm I love pour overs. I love individual brewed cups. Like it's a really cool thing, especially for shops to offer.
Right.
But they're just no matter how much you do it and how trained and good of a barista you are, like there are inconsistencies constantly with that. And the smallest thing, even down to like doing a different amount of pulses or just
Right.
whatever, not doing it right, not saturating enough, will affect that total flavor of the cup.
Right.
Um, so yeah, man, like we've actually moved to all the shops that the new shops are opening now. We're doing like either a pour steady in them or Marco's got this really cool like automated pour over system.
Okay.
So we've actually switched to doing a lot of that. So people can still get the individual cup, something we're not brewing on drip, but it's still as consistent as it can possibly be.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
So, as far as, your guys' goals and stuff, where does that, line up as far as I wouldn't say donations, but how are you guys kind of giving back to those countries that you're buying beans from? Are you guys giving donations or anything like that? Or are
Yeah.
you trying to build buildings, schools, etc.?
Yeah. So a lot of the farmers that we work with are, like I said, we're working directly with the farms and with their families.
Right.
So a lot of those farms, like the one from Papua New Guinea I was talking about, they are specifically building like, well, their whole story is really cool. And I don't know how much time we're kind of running low on time, so I don't know if I
Oh,
want
we
to
got
go
about
all into it.
15
But
minutes.
okay, the gist of like what they're doing over there, the dude's name is Vikram, and it's his whole family. Um, that's like a pretty rough part of town, and
Right.
and on top of that, it's the roads are just pretty rough, and you can't necessarily like drive their beans from where they're harvested to the processing facility, which is off site.
Okay.
It's this crazy story that they told us where essentially like the farmers have to carry the beans on their back down this road, like miles to the processing facility. And there's buyers set up all along the road to offer them money for the beans. But
Right.
the farther you are from the processing facility, the less money you get per pound. It's just this weird, like, you're limited to how physically far you can carry something,
For sure.
which doesn't feel right. So Vikram and his whole family essentially built an estate that has a processing facility on it. Not only that, but when we buy those beans, that money goes toward like they've built schools and houses for the
Okay.
kids and churches for the families. And like, um, even to the point I was talking to him at SCA and I asked like, hey, I would love to go to Origin if you guys are ever planning a trip soon. And they specifically made it very clear, like, we would love for you to go. It is a dangerous spot. Like,
For sure.
there's like a lot going on to where like your safety is not necessarily guaranteed if you come.
Right. Right.
Um, so like supporting farms like that so they can be able to build into their infrastructure and like help the community is like huge to us. We've done a couple times too with some of our farmers where we've run almost like a fundraiser in the shop. So like, uh, a certain portion of this bean is going toward this one specific project. So like if they're trying to build a new school or like a new playground for the kids, like we'll do a little promo that says like, hey, this certain amount of the sales are going to go toward that, or even keeping it open for people to donate more if they want. That's something we haven't done in a couple years, but I would love to get back to doing that because it's just one more way of bridging that gap between when the customer comes to the register and they buy that coffee. Well, now they can tangibly see like where that money is going toward on that farm. So
Right. That's
yeah.
awesome. All right, guys. Well, you heard it here first. Honest Coffee Roasters. Go follow them ASAP. It's always a pleasure meeting individuals that are giving back to their communities as well as giving back to those countries where they source their beans from. So that's just awesome. And I definitely want to buy some coffee from you guys as well.
No, we'll just do
So,
a trade. I'll send you some stuff as long
all
as
right.
I can try that new stuff you're roasting.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
before we get off here, we got about 10 minutes, a little over 10 minutes. So anyone, I want you to give some tips to anyone that is getting into the coffee industry. Let's say they had the experience you had, they had the espresso, or they had my experience with pour over, and they're like, listen, I am all in. So what is the tips you have for those individuals that are starting off in the coffee industry, and how can they stay motivated through the whole process?
Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing would be like go find a local shop, someone who's roasting their own stuff, or even a multi roastery, just like a craft coffee spot where their coffee is their number one thing that they're really passionate about.
Right.
And just go ask questions, like get some coffee there, ask them what's going on. Do not be discouraged if they are standoffish or don't necessarily want to talk about it, because I feel like that can just be the vibe sometimes. Um, I would tell people not to get discouraged with that and maybe just try somewhere new, or because there are people out there who want to, like, what we're doing as far as like empathy and teaching people about coffee is that's not just us at all. Like that's a huge thing, and
Right.
you just got to find the shops that are doing it. And then man, there's so many resources online. Like most of my knowledge that I learned was through just looking at different blogs, different websites, different podcasts on coffee. Uh, like I said, the guys over at Cat and Cloud do an awesome podcast. But I also just love how they talk about like their business practices and what they do in their shop and the culture around it.
Right.
There was a lot of stuff like as a manager listening to that gave me a bunch of ideas and like inspiration of like I would really love to run this the way that they do it.
Right.
They were one of the biggest helps for me when I was coming into specialty coffee. And then, yeah, you got a bunch of like small blogs and stuff like that, or, you know, Sprudge is a really good one around the coffee world, and Barista Hustle. And then, you know, you got James Hoffman on YouTube. I think he does a fantastic job of breaking that stigma of specialty coffee being this like elite big thing.
Right.
He will for sure dive into a bunch of like scientific stuff that will like blow your mind.
Yeah.
But then also at the end of the day, like, he's like, well, that's not that big of a deal. Just do it this way and it's fine. Like it's going to be a great cup. So yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of resources out there. Specialty coffee's just grown and grown over the years. So I feel like there's a bunch of stuff.
All right. Awesome. Hey, so if anyone decided to come through one of your shops or your roastery, what kind of, and you already kind of touched on it, on trying to replicate an environment, what can they expect environmental wise, and what can they expect when they come into the shop?
Yeah. So like, hopefully when you go into the shop, I mean, what we've been trying for is we're welcoming, we're like essentially ready to help you. If you have questions, if like, we want to be that shop that I was talking about earlier with like, if somebody comes in and they want to learn more and they ask those questions, we want to be the shop that gives them the resources of like, this is that information, this is where you can find it. And like,
right.
Yeah, so we try really hard. You know, our Franklin location too, our main, that's like our flagship store. It's in Franklin, Tennessee. We have our smaller roaster there. And like people come in all the time and just watch us do our thing there. And the roasters are pretty welcoming. And, you know, as long as they're not in the middle of like doing some dramatic thing with the curve and like have all the, you know, a lot of roasting is specific about timing, but as long as they're not like totally focused in that, like they will totally take time to explain the different processes and what we're doing and who we're working with. So yeah, that, and then just some solid coffee. We got an internal QC team. Actually, Gio's one of the guys that I was talking about with the latte art. That bounces around all the shops, make sure things are dialed in, being brewed correctly, and being brewed really well. Like, again, at the end of the day, we want to give the best coffee that we can because that just reflects the farmers really well. So yeah, making sure that's all consistent.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Ray. It's been awesome. And also, if you guys have any new products come out, or if you have anything else you want to talk about, just hit me back up and we'll bring you guys back on the podcast.
Heck yeah, for sure.
And yeah, 'cause I can talk all day about coffee. So
oh, I could too. If people, on that note too, if anyone has questions too, like, and if they're in a town where there's not a specialty spot where they can learn or whatever, like, my email is always open. Anyone at the shop is pretty much always open. So like, feel free to have people reach out to me as well. I could talk coffee forever. So if anyone needs anything, I can help too.
For sure. Yeah. Go ahead and give a plug in the bottom where they can find you, your Instagram account, all that stuff.
Okay, cool. Just say it right now.
Yep. Go ahead and just throw that out there just in case they're just listening.
Yeah. So they can just email me. It's Ray, RAY, at honest.coffee. No .com or anything, just honest.coffee. Super easy to remember. Honest.coffee is our website.
Okay.
That will take them to everything. That's like our normal retail site, but on there's pages talking about like how we source, about the beans we use. Also links to all of our socials are on there too. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Hey guys, that will be all linked below. I will put that in the video, and follow us next week for another video.
See ya. Thanks for having me.